Marvin, your turn.
Um,
I got to get used to the reverse on that. To Marvin.
um, yeah, that one's interesting because I feel like you can start out having some kind of free will, but it is influenced by external forces like your parents and environment you're raised in. But there's a point to where like you start discerning between like whether you want to be a positive influence or a negative one, whether you want to be a masochist or an example or something. So I feel like the free will it does exist because in that moment you do have the option how you're going to continue on, and as you add on um these burdens, I feel like burden of decision, they tend to influence your continuing free will. So like if someone's addicted to something, you know what I mean, like that becomes a heavier and heavier weight upon their thought process and their daily actions and uh, how they carry themselves. So at that rate, like you still have the free will, but it's not strong, because you don't have the capability to say no. You're like, you don't have the strength that you once had. Whereas in the very beginning of it all, you were, yeah, I can, no, you know what I mean? So,
Okay.
uh, you ultimately do still have it. It's just harder and harder to see with the more decisions that you make that limit your free will. I feel like
Okay.
that stifle your free will.
Okay. So my thoughts on this are free will does not exist because if everything is comes from arises from a series of patterns, you know what I mean? Our genetics are patterns, like which those our genetic patterns are give way to our predisposition, right? And if everything we have experienced colors why we do what we do, how can free will exist? Now, the important thing to consider is that the belief in free will typically means people who believe in free will typically are more mentally healthy. They believe they can handle their situations and get out of it. Okay. And however, the more educated people become, the more research that is accumulated, the more knowledge they acquire, and typically people of higher IQs, more often than not, argue that free will does not exist. Now, the greatest thinkers are often those with the biggest depressions, the heaviest thought patterns, and they're the ones that are most fucked up in the head. Because without madness, there's no such thing as genius without madness. Now, that does just because free will does or does not exist does not mean, even if it doesn't exist, it does not mean that you can't choose with what you have to do better for yourself. Because if you believe you have control over how you handle what you've been given, that's the same thing that equates out to belief in free will. But even that there must be reasons or factors that you have that belief, because if you're told your entire life you don't have that thought process, you don't have free will, you don't have this, you become more of a materialistic, it doesn't matter what I do view. But you can have free will, or you can have a lack of free will while still saying, I'm going to do better for the world. I'm going to do what I can to make the world a better place. It doesn't matter whether I go through hardships or not. I'm going to do my best with it. Now, there's also research that says when they had people hooked up to like some machine that look at their brain or whatever, and they said the moment you think about doing something, do it. Okay, they'd find that the unconscious mind always lights up before, like hundreds of milliseconds before the actual process of doing something. So that shows our unconscious mind actually dictates our conscious actions. And if our unconscious mind dictates our conscious actions, how can we have free will? Before we
Well,
go
it
back
has
to
an
oh,
input.
go, what?
I was just saying that it has an input on our free will, but we still have our conscious mind deciding whether to go through with that suggestion that our unconscious mind made or not go through with that suggestion.
But that's
Because like
also an
in the
aspect.
study, but in the study they were told you're going to just go through with your first thought. So they weren't then enacting their free will to decide I'm going to or I'm not. They'd already predisposed themselves.
But
And in a
that's
sense, they used their free will to predispose I'm going to go through with it.